Okay, now that I'm on a somewhat quieter part of the path, let's talk about love, because for some reason that's been on my mind for the last 24 hours. Um, Sort of just a random discourse, but like the factors that contribute to love and what a healthy relationship looks like are things I feel like a good majority of us are always wondering about. At least like younger people. Um, I don't know. It's a complicated topic. Like some of the things that have crossed my mind, it's like, we talk about, oh, even if there's like a 1% chance someone likes you, that's still 75 or now 8, what do you call it, 8 million people. But it's like, well, yeah, but the person you're going to have a healthy, stable relationship with is like simultaneously much harder to find and much easier to find. Much harder to find because you're not going to be in a dating pool with 8 million people. They're spread out across like literally millions of square miles. But on the other side, it's way easier to find than that because people adapt and change. People that are looking find other people that are looking, and it just sort of winds up being like a match, whether or not it's like a fantastic match. Most of the people I've met, their standards are like somewhat adjustable, but they also have like instantaneous standards of like, you know, they sort of meet you and realize you're not for them, or vice versa. But then there's some people you meet and you're just like, wow, you're attractive, personality or looks or whatever. But I don't know. So it's like, there's also like, where are you in your life? Are you looking for a relationship? Are you looking for the type of relationship that person's looking for? Like in the modern day, it seems like there's plenty more options than there even were in the past. Like up into including polyamory. I'm sort of like a let people do what they're going to do kind of thing, because clearly there are some people who find what they're looking for with other people who find that same thing, and neither of them are looking for the thing that I'm looking for or that you may be looking for. So c'est la vie. I think that's kind of a Gen Z thing, perhaps. I don't know. So I mean, right, they have to be looking for the same thing you are, and keep in mind that like when you find them, they're going to be in one stage of life, but 10 years from now they're not going to be in that same stage of life, and neither are you. And then there's the question, like, especially with America, can run into this this habit that's been developed of like hyper individualism. So like, there's a lot more focus, I think, now than there may have been in the past on like, go get a stable career, make sure you know how to take care of yourself fully. Like, can you cook for yourself? Can you clean well? Can you organize yourself? But something that sort of brought that into question a little bit for me is like, I saw this couple a few days ago while I was traveling, and they're like one of the cutest couples I've ever seen. Husband and wife. Husband was like, yeah, I know where we're going on vacation, but the wife planned the whole thing, and they're like really riding that balance. And it's sort of like playing to the strengths of people, right? Not everyone's a good cook. Not everyone is well organized. Sometimes neither person is, and that still works out. Like I know a couple who just sort of all over the place all the time, but they enjoy living in that sort of space, so it's fine. It works for them. And and then there's like also questions of longevity, because there's some types of relationships where it's like you can get along great, or maybe even have just like great sex and that's it, but there's like not a connection that's going to propel you into the future. Like, I mean, in all parts of our lives, there are things that we want right now, there are things we wanted yesterday, there are things we want tomorrow, and there are things that we want to establish, like financial savings that'll last years or the rest of our lives. And those are a different sort of investment. And often, while we can rely on people who are older than us to sort of explain the grounds that you build upon, each one of them has come to their own conclusions, and they may not well be in line with what you expect. One sec. So, yeah, there's sort of this question, right? We always, well, not always, but I'd say a lot of us look at the advice of older folks and be like, okay, you've been there before, so clearly that you have something valuable to say. But also your value system is kind of old and outdated. Like for me, the biggest thing that irritates me is like misogyny when it comes to outdated views, because it's just sort of like we've very much noted over the course of history that women can do anything men can do. There are like some biological differences, but there's a handful of women I've met that both like legitimately and like experientially have a hell of a lot more testosterone than any guy that I know. And I mean, vice versa, like the way we act, the people we like, the things that, like, the activities we choose as hobbies, those are all played into a little bit by like sort of what's common for people to do, like divided by gender, divided by sex, divided by like population, social class, or what do you call it, or race or ethnicity. You know, the divisions kind of go on forever. Sort of your decision at the end of the day as to what you join, but it's worth keeping in mind that the things that were there, that these habits sort of that we see, where for example, you know, like say Hispanics from Mexico have like a certain type of cuisine they're very used to eating. Doesn't necessarily prevent you from eating other types of food, but even that cuisine was developed in large part by what people liked and what was available. So now new things are available and your taste may be different than the people who came before you. It's not terribly unreasonable to choose something new. Same goes for love, right? Your parents may have had a certain type of love that works for them. I've seen many families where it's like almost transactional. Families stay together because it's a good financial decision. It helps when you're raising kids. It means that you can divide responsibilities. And love at different ages for different people may look a lot more like a job, or just cohabitation, or like someone you're angry with all the time. And I mean, I guess take it with a grain of salt. I've seen some relationships that get, in my opinion, very bad. Domestic abuse is on one end of that for sure, as a sexual assault. Like knowing couples where it's sort of like one partner thrives off of the other, especially in like a narcissistic relationship, you wind up with what is essentially marital rape, which I feel like is an under-discussed thing in the US. But it's like that happens, right? It's like just because you're married does not mean your partner wants to have sex all the time, and variants thereof, right? Like these are certainly aspects of it. And likewise, like noticing, I've been in like 3 longish term relationships, and I feel like some of the things they've taught me are like, you know, there's that puppy dog love that you have in high school, and you're just sort of all over that person. You want to be with them all the time. And then as you get older, you're like, wait, I have spent a good amount of time in my life developing other habits. And sometimes two people find like each other and they both just want their lives to be about having another person. And if that works, it works. But if you've got like hobbies and such, or you're a person who like has a social battery that's only so big, then it's not unreasonable that you would only look for like some of your day to spend with someone, not all of your day, because you need some time for yourself, you need some time to recover. And you know, a lot of these questions are things that you can either try and like gather by observing someone on a date, or observing them before you even ask them out, or before you hang out, or when you're hanging out as friends, and then maybe turns into something more. But the point is, there's a lot of variation, and you can almost never know all the factors before you go in. And then of course there's the side with like, well, what's the history? Has that person done things that just morally I fundamentally disagree with? Are they someone who like wants to change what they're doing, or doesn't want to change what they're doing, but I want them to change what they're doing? Like drinking perhaps, or smoking, or whatever. There's a lot of different ways it can go, and even down to hobbies. So like something I've experienced is like wanting to share my hobbies with someone and wanting to be like, try to be a better partner by taking part in theirs. But sometimes it's just sort of a thing you let evolve. I don't know, it's an interesting breakdown, but yeah, it's something you let evolve. So anyways, the point is, with that it's like, there, even the hobbies that you want to share may be separate, and you'll benefit from being your own person a lot of the time, like in some capacity, you know. And there's tasks that like some couples benefit from doing on their own, like one partner cooks if they're a good cook, or they just like cooking alone. I know my mom tends to have ownership of the kitchen, There are times my dad cooks, and there are times that they attempt to cook together. Works better for some couples than others, so I guess take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, so it's that. It's also like the way you see other people. I've noticed there's relationships where partners are like, it's sort of like a fleeting thing. They're always hopping from one thing to the next. I know people who have cheated, and that's one thing I haven't gotten enough data on, is like why people cheat, or what's the motivation for cheating if you're in a stable relationship. But yeah, and I mean, and there's different phases to entering a relationship. There's also different phases during the relationship. Like, there's that stable point where they're like literally your roommate, but you love them in a borderline familial way, but also in like other ways. There's like times you find them really attractive, there's times you find them to be an annoyance, and maybe you're also more willing to do both of those things as you spend more time with them. The early phases, it feels like a lot of sort of trying to like skirt around things, like trying to not be too much yourself that you drive the other person off. And I know like a lot of common advice is just like, well, be yourself. And it's like, yeah, when a person fully accepts you, then being yourself is totally fine. But day one, like, you know, whatever, say you like to eat your ice cream upside down, and so it just looks completely disgusting that it's dripping all over your face. You know, that's a cute quirk, maybe a few months into a relationship. If that's the way you go and ask someone out as well, currently eating ice cream upside down, that's a disaster. Like, it's just like, there's I don't know, it's part of the social contract, right? It's like friends, colleagues, whatever. There are certain things that you only do with people once you're comfortable with them. And we all sort of abide by what we think the general person wants, so that it's easier to gradually go off of that, right? Like, even when you meet someone new, it's usually easier to just sort of like or like ride the middle of the line politically until people start to give you more of their ideas and you start to give more of yours, and you gradually like decide, okay, this is what I'm comfortable talking about with that person. And I've met couples that like completely thrive independently. Like this one friend who, she and her girlfriend, like, they meet, they throughout college they met like every couple months. They didn't talk much between them, they didn't hang out much, but they were like still very happy with each other, like didn't want another relationship or anything. So I don't know. And then there's times where it's like you get what you want and it's not what you wanted, right? So like being in a relationship where, and I've had this experience, right, where it's like you have all the time for that person, you have all the effort, it just doesn't feel like you're connecting. There's a point where you have to pull the trigger. I was talking about this with someone yesterday or a few days ago, but it's like, it's hard to tell, especially in a long-term relationship, if it's like time to try harder because relationships take commitment, or if it's time to pull away because this relationship is dead or just not worth it. And each one will give you experiences, but it's like, I don't know, it's the kind of experiences where like I like to climb things a lot. There's some climbing experiences that are hiking up a trail that already exists, you know, sort of following the rules, following your parents' advice, whatever. They're fine. You may, like, you'll get the experience of getting to the top or wherever you get off along the way. Then there's things that are like kind of dangerous, like climbing a tree that is very tall. You fall down, you get hurt, you'll recover more than likely. And there's things like I did when I was 6 years old, where I climbed up the side of a tree that was sticking out the side of a waterfall, like easily a couple hundred feet in the air. And those are things that you risk. You decide if the risk is worth it. You won't know if you'll come out the other side. And then you either live to tell the tale or you don't. And some relationships, like I say that, I guess, a little comically, but it is sort of true. Like, there are some relationships you really just don't survive, emotionally or physically. And you have to be careful. Like, I don't know. I feel like at my age, or slightly younger than me, it's very attractive to have like the bad girl, bad boy, bad person type, little rule breaker, or like someone who like doesn't fit the norm. And in some cases that really works for people. Like they thrive off of each other in that. But at the same time, there's a risk where it's like what seems great on the surface, if you're like, say, an office guy who just wants to have a stable life, but it's attractive to you that someone is like absolutely chaotic, super goth. I know that there's varieties of goth. I've been lectured on this before. It was just like, we'll do anything Daredevil-esque. Like, your heart will palpitate around them, but it might also stop as a result of said palpitations. So, it might push you to your limits, and it's attractive, but you can take it in small doses. There's like, I don't know, I've had a little bit of a theory that's like, just because we find models attractive does not mean we actually want to like date them. You sort of have like your type, and then there's like the people who are conventionally attractive, or it's like things that are blown out of proportion, like, I don't know, like some surgeries, like lip injections and stuff. It's like theoretically attractive, but then it's like something feels off sometimes when you look at it. And it's sort of up to each person to decide. But yeah, and there's also like, I remember there was a study when I was a freshman that my professor told me about, where it's like women tend to find their partners more attractive over time, regardless of where they started on like the, in quotations, like attractiveness spectrum, but that male partners not necessarily. And yet it has become very clear to me, based on who dates who and how beautiful they find them, that like there are definitely people that find every single type of person beautiful. I mean, down to like literally your eyes are in a different part of your face. And I've met people like that, and they are like fully loved by their partners, and it's fantastic. And I've also been told many times, just do you. Like, you don't have to like seek out every single person, try to find them attractive, because there will be someone that finds them attractive. And sort of like, I don't know, I spent a lot of my life trying to like bend to other people and then failing to like be the best intermediary. So I'm sort of just like, okay, there will be a partner for everyone. No guarantees that we'll find them. That I feel like that is also a bit of reality. I do feel like there's a little bit of a push, like especially if you're religious. It's sort of like, well, you do believe that like God or in sort of religious figure here will like sort of push you in the right direction. But you never know, right? I don't know. There's a lot to unpack with religion. That's a very separate topic, though it ties into this. That is a point of note, is that like we call it like, if your religion matches up, that may be beneficial, but it's also like, say you're questioning your faith, finding someone else who's questioning their faith may be a good thing if you guys want to go in the same direction. It might be a bad thing if you wind up being like, oh, I've decided I believe this thing, and the other person's like, I've decided I believe nothing. So it's an unfortunate mix. As are most things in life, sort of like you make the best of it, and like your partner may not agree with you on virtually anything, but you'll love them regardless. That's also an interesting type of love to me, where it's like, I mean, it happens with parents and children. Like, it's simultaneously unconditional, and yet you can't stand their thoughts, like their views on things. But it's a feeling. And there's like different types of love. Like, I think like Plato and Aristotle talk about, where it's like a love of like companionship, a love of friendship, a love of romanticism. There's like lust, but there's also like lust is like deeper than the surface of the body. I don't know. There's like a religious love for like your neighbor. There's love for your parents, but there's also like different types of love for your parents and for your siblings and for yourself. And so, I don't know. My goal with a lot of these videos is just to pose questions, like put some information out there, follow a train of thought, and then sort of see what conclusions it drives people to. Because good discussion, I think, happens that way. A lot of it is more questions than answers. Because that's what sort of keeps you going. If you decide everything you'll ever believe when you're 20, it's kind of hard to spend the rest of your life finding things interesting. But if you're always asking why does this relationship work? Why does it doesn't? Why does it not? Why do these plants grow the way they do? Why do I believe what I believe? I don't know. It sucks sometimes. It certainly makes for an interesting journey around the world. So I guess in totality, there's sort of two things I'm trying to say. One is that love can look like virtually anything, but there are many types that are incompatible, and there are many unexpected types that are compatible. And the other half is that love can be found anywhere. It is unlikely to be found, and I'd say almost proportionally likely to be found to how long you expect the relationship to last. It might be very easy to find something that lasts a short amount of time, or there's more people maybe looking for that. But certainly a thing I've learned somewhat to do with relationships and without them is like, if you are in the right place for what you're looking for, if you're in the place with people who want the same things you want, it's a lot easier to find what you're looking for. So, you know, you're simultaneously very likely to run into people who share some of the things you're looking for, and also maybe not so likely to find, in quotations, the one. And that's also up to personal belief if that even exists. But yeah, last little addendum I want to throw in there is experience based on dating apps. Generally, bad idea. I tend to work more on like older fashioned ways. I really like to meet people in person. As I'm doing this video, I'm on the Camino de Santiago, and that is like, I have met maybe 5 to 10 new people a day and conversed with them, and it's been a week now, so that's like 70 people. I don't necessarily know if that's an exaggeration. So yeah, it's been really interesting, because I find that like it's much easier to get people's stories. They're not going to just shrug you off. You don't get ghosted. There's more emotion in people's voices than there are in the words on a page, especially when a lot of those words are thrown out, like on Snapchat, right? It's like your word literally disappears after 24 hours. So you kind of don't have any guarantee of longevity. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like talking to people is just like, it makes your experience going around the world like that much more interesting. You get to like learn about people even if you don't wind up dating them. It gives you more practice for when you do eventually meet that right person, because you know how to talk to people now. I remember when I was in middle school, there was a lot more like people just chilling on their phones, even sitting next to each other, and it sort of sucked because people felt like they were losing the ability to talk to other human beings, and it would be nice to not have that. So anyways, good luck out there. And I could use some too, but there's a good chance we'll find what we need to find in the end. Good luck.